What you're about to hear is one of the most significant military escalations in the Middle East in years, and it's happening right now as of this recording. Today is March 16th, 2026. Israel has just announced what it is calling a limited ground operation inside southern Lebanon. I'm putting limited in air quotes, and I'm going to explain exactly why throughout this video. Because while the Israeli military is using that language, analysts, diplomats, opposition leaders, and over 1 million Lebanese civilians who are currently fleeing their homes might have a very different word for what's happening. Stay with me. This is going to be detailed, it's going to be sourced, and we're going to give you the full picture. Let's start with the hard facts. What the Israeli military has officially said, the Israeli military announced that its troops have launched what it described as limited and targeted ground operations in southern Lebanon, with fighting intensifying around the strategic southern town of Qiyam. Specifically, the 91st Galilee Regional Division began a raid in the eastern sector of southern Lebanon, during which troops encountered and killed several Hezbollah operatives. The IDF described the operation as aimed at expanding what it called the forward defense area. And in their own words, and I'm citing this directly from the Israeli military's official statement, this operation is part of the effort to establish forward defense, to remove threats and create an additional layer of security for residents of the north. Shortly after that statement, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz made things even clearer. He said, "The IDF has begun a ground maneuver in Lebanon to remove threats and protect the residents of the Galilee and the north." Katz added that hundreds of thousands of Shia residents of southern Lebanon who had already fled their homes would not be permitted to return south of the Litani River until, in his words, the security of northern Israeli residents was guaranteed. Now, the Litani River is critical here. It bisects Lebanon from east to west, roughly 30 kilometers north of the Israeli border. It has been a key geographic marker in every Lebanon conflict since 1978. And as we're going to see, it's the center of Israel's stated strategic objective in this operation. To understand what's happening today, we need to rewind just a little since November 2024. Despite an official ceasefire, Israel has continued its attacks on Lebanon nearly every day, killing around 500 people over that period. Then, at the end of February 2026, the entire regional picture shifted dramatically. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched joint strikes on Iran and assassinated Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. That was a tectonic event. The killing of Khamenei, the man who had led Iran since 1989, triggered an immediate chain reaction. On March 2nd, Hezbollah launched several projectiles into northern Israel, the first time it had done so since the November 2024 ceasefire targeting a missile defense site south of Haifa. Hezbollah said it restarted fighting to force Israel to stop its aggression and evacuate from seized Lebanese territories, and emphasized that its move was unrelated to the Iran war. Israel responded with immediate force. Israeli jets bombed the Lebanese capital Beirut, issuing evacuation orders to civilians in 50 villages across southern Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley. And then, days later, on March 14th, the situation escalated dramatically again. Hezbollah launched more than 200 missiles in a massive coordinated attack together with Iran, which fired dozens of its own missiles simultaneously. Heavy damage was reported in the Hatzer Haglilit area of northern Israel from that combined barrage. It was that attack that appeared to change Israeli calculus entirely. A senior Israeli official told Axios, "Before this attack, we were ready for a ceasefire in Lebanon, but after it, there is no way back from a large-scale military operation." So here's the key point. This is not a spontaneous military action. This is a calculated, deliberate escalation in direct response to a sequence of events that began with the killing of Iran's supreme leader. Whatever you think about the politics, the military logic here is traceable and documented. Now, let's talk about that word, limited. This is where things get genuinely contested and where I want to be honest with you about what we know and what we don't. On one hand, The IDF is using the word limited deliberately and consistently. The Jerusalem Post notes that while the move marks a dramatic escalation, it still does not amount to a full-scale invasion along the lines of the 2024 campaign, as forces are not advancing all the way to the Litani River at this stage. An Israeli army official stated on March 16th that the objective of the ground offensive is to push Hezbollah operatives away from the border, not to stop the militant group's rocket fire on northern and central Israel. That is a nuanced and somewhat surprising admission. They are saying, clearly, this isn't about stopping rockets. It's about moving Hezbollah back from the border, creating distance, establishing what they're calling forward defense. But, and this is a massive but, there are serious reasons to question whether limited is the right word or whether it will stay limited. Israel is planning to significantly expand its ground operation, aiming to seize the entire area south of the Litani River and dismantle Hezbollah's military infrastructure, according to both Israeli and U.S. officials. The Israeli plan aims to seize the entire area south of the Litani River, and the operation reportedly became inevitable after Hezbollah launched its large-scale rocket attack on northern Israel. And here's what a senior Israeli official actually said, and this is the quote that has analysts most alarmed. "We are going to do what we did in Gaza," the official told Axios, referring to the destruction of buildings and tunnels that Hezbollah uses to store weapons and launch strikes. Think about that. We are going to do what we did in Gaza. That is the stated vision from a senior Israeli official for what they intend to do in Lebanon. Haaretz reported on March 16th that the Israeli army said it is deepening its ground offensive in southern Lebanon and sending additional troops to the northern border in a move that could signal a broader campaign against Hezbollah than previously expected. So, limited right now, potentially massive very soon. That is the honest picture. Let's talk about what's actually happening to people on the ground, because the human cost of this conflict is already staggering, even before any major expansion. Between March 2nd and March 16th, Israeli attacks killed at least 886 people, including 67 women, 111 children, and 38 health workers, and wounded 2,141 others. According to Lebanon's Ministry of Public Health, Lebanese authorities announced on March 16th that more than 1 million people, including women and children, have now been forced to flee from their homes after the Israeli army issued evacuation orders for many neighborhoods in southern Lebanon as well as the capital, Beirut. 1 million people in 2 weeks. The Israeli military struck multiple locations in southern Lebanon with airstrikes, artillery shelling, and heavy machine gun fire. Cities and towns hit include Kiamyeta, Borj Kalawiya, Sultaniya. Kiam is particularly significant. The city of Kiam, a Hezbollah stronghold, is strategically located and seen as a gateway to southern Lebanon, making it a focal point of the current fighting. In northern Israel, a Hezbollah rocket impacted in Nahariya on the evening of March 16th, sparking a fire and wounding 6 people, including 4 miners who were treated for smoke inhalation. This is a war that is hurting people on both sides, and the intensity is not decreasing, it is escalating. Let's step back and look at the bigger strategic picture, because this is not just about a few villages near the border. Defense Minister Israel Katz said that hundreds of thousands of Shia residents of southern Lebanon who have evacuated their homes will not return to the area south of the Litani River until the safety of Israel's northern residents is guaranteed. The IDF has had 3 armored and infantry divisions on the Lebanese border since the start of the conflict, with some ground forces conducting limited incursions over the past 2 weeks. The IDF reported that between 85 and 90% of Hezbollah's pre-2023 rocket arsenal has already been destroyed. Before the war, Hezbollah had more than 150 mil rockets. That is a remarkable military claim, if accurate. It suggests that years of air campaigns and the 2024 invasion have significantly degraded Hezbollah's arsenal. But here's the catch. The IDF has said that Hezbollah is now launching most of its attacks from deeper within southern Lebanon, not from close to the border, which is precisely why Israel says it needs to go further in to push that threat back. Time magazine spoke to Michael Young, senior editor at the Carnegie Middle East Center, who explained that Israel wants to create a buffer zone in South Lebanon to ensure the towns in northern Israel are as far as possible from Hezbollah's rockets. He noted that some people have suggested this buffer zone could be 10 to 15 kilometers deep. Jan also suggested this is really a two-step objective. First, to occupy the area south of the Litani, and second, to create a surveilled zone north of the Litani, monitored with equipment and drones to prevent attacks from further back. That is a very significant ambition. That is not limited. That is potentially an extended occupation of southern Lebanon. The international community has responded, and the reactions are deeply divided along predictable lines. The Trump administration backs a major Israeli operation to disarm Hezbollah, but is also pressing to limit the damage to the Lebanese state and pushing for direct Israel-Lebanon talks on a post-war agreement. The U.S. asked Israel not to bomb Beirut's international airport or other Lebanese state infrastructure. Israel agreed to spare the airport, but stopped short of giving a blanket commitment to protect other state infrastructure. An Israeli official told Axios, "We feel we have full U.S. backing for this operation." Meanwhile, 5 major Western democracies took a sharply different tone. Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and Britain issued a joint statement warning that a significant Israeli ground offensive would have devastating humanitarian consequences and could lead to a protracted conflict, adding that it must be averted. The five-nation statement said the humanitarian situation in Lebanon, including ongoing mass displacement, was already deeply alarming and called for meaningful engagement between Israeli and Lebanese representatives to negotiate a sustainable political solution. Turkey was more forceful. Turkey's foreign ministry issued a statement firmly condemning the Israeli ground operation in Lebanon, saying it was worsening instability in the region, and accused the Netanyahu government of implementing what it called genocidal and collective punishment policies. And what about Lebanon itself? The Lebanese government publicly condemned Hezbollah for launching attacks without state authorization, stated that decisions of war and peace are exclusively in the hands of the Lebanese state, and moved to ban Hezbollah's military activities, calling on the group to place its weapons under government control. That is extraordinary. The Lebanese government, long seen as either co-opted by or paralyzed in the face of Hezbollah, is formally distancing itself from the militant group, even as Israeli forces enter its territory. So what does Hezbollah itself say? Hezbollah leader Naim Kazoum, in a speech, said the diplomatic track pursued by the Lebanese government had failed to secure sovereignty or protect Lebanon's residents, and declared, "Therefore there is no solution but resistance." When asked about a possible ground invasion, Kazoum stated, "When the enemy threatens a ground invasion, we tell it this is not a threat, but one of the traps you will fall into." That language echoes what Hezbollah said in 2006 and again in 2024. And both times, Israel did invade, and both times, Hezbollah survived, battered but intact. Senior fellow David Dowd at FDD wrote, "Israel, it seems, no longer trusts Lebanese promises to restrain or disarm Hezbollah, and is therefore taking matters into its own hands by apparently moving to re-establish a security zone in South Lebanon to keep Hezbollah from the border." Implicitly, Israel is admitting that Hezbollah will continue to exist and that such a buffer is necessary. That is a sobering analytical point. Israel is not claiming it can destroy Hezbollah. It is claiming it can contain it. I want to dwell on what is, in my view, the most alarming dimension of this entire situation. The explicit comparison Israeli officials are making to Gaza. We've already mentioned the quote, "We're going to do what we did in Gaza." But let's unpack what that actually means. In Gaza, Israel launched a ground operation in October 2023 that was also initially described as targeted and limited. What followed was one of the most destructive urban warfare campaigns in decades. According to the World Bank's Lebanon Rapid Damage and Needs Assessment, the 2024 Lebanon conflict alone cost Lebanon a total of $14 billion, $5 billion in physical damages, and $7.2 billion in lost productivity and revenue. And that was from a conflict that ended in a ceasefire after about 2 months. Now, Israel is signaling it wants to go further, and this time, its stated objective is not a ceasefire. It is a security zone, an indefinite buffer. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz declared in April 2025 that Israeli forces would indefinitely remain in security zones that they cleared and seized in Lebanon, Gaza, and Syria, describing them as a buffer between the enemy and Israeli communities. Now we're in March 2026, and Katz is saying the same thing again, with the explicit addition that displaced Lebanese civilians will not be allowed to return south of the Litani until conditions are met. Israeli opposition leader Yair Golan, chairman of the center-left Democrats Party and a former chief of the military's Northern Command, voiced alarm. We must not allow the failure in Gaza to replicate itself in Lebanon and Iran. We must not allow this government to lead us into an endless war there as well. That warning is coming from a former IDF general, someone who knows the military's capabilities and limitations better than almost anyone. Israeli columnist Gideon Levy warned that Israel is in the initial phase of its ground operation in Lebanon and cautioned that the operation could become complicated. He said, "Look at Gaza. Israel is stuck in Gaza without any clue how and when it will get out of Gaza. The same might happen now in Lebanon. As of right now, March 18th, 2026, the situation is fluid. Nobody can tell you with certainty what happens next. But based on all available reporting, analysts are pointing to 3 broad scenarios. Scenario 1, the operation stays limited. Israel pushes Hezbollah back a few kilometers from the border, establishes a narrow buffer zone, and then enters negotiations. The Trump administration is actively pressing for direct Israel-Lebanon talks, with Trump advisor Mossad Boulos, who is Tiffany Trump's father-in-law, in contact with Israeli, Lebanese, and Arab officials in an effort to advance direct talks. If those talks gain traction, a ceasefire could be achievable within weeks. Scenario 2, full seizure of southern Lebanon. This is the scenario that's already being planned for. Israeli officials have explicitly stated the goal is to seize all territory south of the Litani River, dismantle weapons depots and villages, push Hezbollah fighters north, and flatten buildings used for weapons storage. This would represent a major, months-long occupation and a humanitarian crisis on a scale Lebanon has not seen since the 1980s scenario. Regional escalation. This is the one that keeps security analysts up at night. The conflict is already embedded in a larger war between the US, Israel, and Iran. Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy. IDF Chief of Staff LT Gen. Al Zamir said on March 16th that Iran is the main arena, and that weakening Iran weakens the entire Hajiko axis, including the Hezbollah terrorist organization. If Iran chooses to dramatically escalate in response to events in Lebanon, or if Hezbollah scores a major military success, the situation could spiral in directions no one is currently predicting. Here's my bottom line. What we know for certain: Israel launched a ground operation in southern Lebanon on March 16th, 2026. It is confirmed, sourced, and documented by multiple major news organizations, the IDF itself, and the Lebanese government. This is not speculation. What remains genuinely unclear, what I'm asking you to hold with appropriate skepticism, is the word limited. That word is doing a lot of work right now. It is the Israeli military's word. It is a word that has been used before, in 2024, in 2023, in 2006. and it has meant very different things in practice than it did on day one. The experts I've cited in this video from Time, the Carnegie Middle East Center, FDD, Georgetown, are uniformly urging caution and warning that the trajectory of this conflict has historically been toward escalation, not containment. Israeli military spokesman Nadav Shoshani said Israel expected operations against Hezbollah to continue for at least 3 more weeks. That's from the IDF's own spokesperson. 3 more weeks. Minimum. Watch what happens to that timeline. This video will be updated as the situation develops. I'm sourcing everything you've heard today from Al Jazeera, Times of Israel, Axios, Furasu, Nijuyon, Wikipedia 2026 Lebanon War article, The Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Haaretz, The Jerusalem Post, and Time magazine, all published between March 14th and March 18th, 2026. Links to all sources are in the description below. Read them yourself. Form your own views. That's what this channel is for. If you found this valuable, please subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Tell me, do you think this operation will stay limited, or do you think it's the beginning of something much larger? I'll see you in the next one.